Okay, thank you everybody for coming, and thank you especially to my colleagues, Senator Murray and Heinrich, for joining us today. Now, over the past few months, can we have some quiet? Thank you. Over the past few months, the Senate Appropriations process has been a shining example of how things should work in Washington. These times are divided. There are closely divided chambers. But nevertheless, under the phenomenal leadership of Appropriation Chair Patty Murray and Vice Chair Collins, all 12 appropriations bills have been reported out of committee. This month, one of the top Senate priorities will be to keep the government open beyond the September 30th deadline. Both parties in both chambers are going to have to work together in a bipartisan way to avoid a shutdown. That is obvious. It may not be obvious to 30 crazy people in the far right of the Republican House, but it's obvious to everyone else. They can't just have it their way. I implore my Republican colleagues to follow our lead. Recognize that time is short to keep the government open. The only way to avoid a shutdown is through bipartisanship. Another priority over here this week will be AI. Tomorrow will be one of our first of several AI Insight forums. My colleagues, Senators Heinrich, Rounds, and Young, will join me in the first of a series of AI forums to bring leaders from inside and outside the industry to debate Congress's role in regulating AI. We'll have a balanced and diverse group at the table, not just those from tech, but AI experts and ethicists who spent years researching and advancing the technology. We'll have organizations representing labor and civil rights, the world of academia, defense, and so much more. So in terms of the people who are going to be critical of the big companies, it's not just some folks from the outside. It's going to be some of the best experts from the inside who have done that as well. All these groups together in one room, talking about why Congress must act, what questions to ask, and how to build a broad consensus for safe innovation is very exciting. And I think our members are going to very much learn a great deal from these forums. Because AI innovation must be the North Star in all we do. I'm talking about innovation in two ways. From a transformational sense, the kind of innovation that unlocks new cures for cancer and other diseases, improves education, protects our national security, increases our food supply, but also sustainable innovation, so that we may find many new and creative ways to protect against AI's risks and minimize the chances of this technology going off the rails, which would undermine innovation altogether. That's why it's sustainable. You can't sustain AI without dealing with the potential downsides, and the only way to do that is some kinds of government guardrails. The only way we'll achieve this group to learn so much about an area that is so complicated, so broad in terms of what it affects in society, and so rapidly changing, is by bringing a diverse group of perspectives together, from those who work every day on those systems to those openly critical of many parts of AI and who worry about its effects on workers, on racial and gender bias, and more. So I really look forward to tomorrow's conversation, the first of many we'll have this fall. I expect we'll hear a wide range of views and opinions, many dissenting views, and then it will be our job through the committees in a bipartisan way to try and come up with legislation that both enhances the benefits and diminishes the liabilities of AI. Senator Murray.
Well, this week, as you know, we're going to consider a legislative package of 3 strongly bipartisan bills that we wrote in the Appropriations Committee to fund everything from veterans care, military construction, transportation and housing, critical nutrition programs, support for our farmers and agricultural research, and even the FDA. It is important to note, as we wrote these bills during the committee process, I made certain to work in lockstep with my counterpart, Vice Chair Collins. Together, we collaborated closely with members on both sides of the aisle, on and off the committees, to get input from nearly every senator and wrote strong bipartisan bills. Do I believe these bills are what either of us would have written on our own? Of course not. But that is compromise, and that is how you can make sure that government can be functional and effective. We did the hard work of negotiating the bills that could actually become law, and all of these bills advanced out of committee without a single no vote. I hope we continue in that same spirit as we consider these bills on the floor and as senators offer amendments. I hope and trust all senators will bear in mind that we need to pass legislation that is bipartisan and the President can sign into law. Moving forward, as I have said, we will need a CR to finish our work, and we must deliver supplemental funding to meet urgent needs. We should meet the entirety of the President's supplemental funding request. Those are the priorities the President's outlined, and they're very important. We need to make sure that we can help our communities around the country rebuild and recover from disasters. We have to make sure that the administration has the resources it needs to stop the flow of fentanyl. We have to avoid a pay cut for our wildland firefighters, and as both Democrats and Republicans have made very clear, we must continue our strong support for Ukraine in this critical moment. None of these are priorities that Congress should turn away from. And by the way, neither is the child care crisis, which only stands to get much worse as critical funding expires in just weeks. Democrats are going to continue to take action on that and offer solutions and talk about what's at stake for our families and our economy, but we need Republicans to work with us on child care. Now, as for what the next few weeks have in store, I can't predict or control what a Republican House majority will choose to do, but here in the Senate, we can do our jobs. There cannot be a crisis or a standoff every time we need to fund the government. The American people do not want chaos or drama from Congress. They want us to find reliable funding for the food safety inspectors who make sure that their dinner is safe to eat. They want to make sure that the air traffic controllers who make sure they can get to where they want to go safely, can do so safely and on time. And they want to make sure that the VA doctors and the staff who work to get our veterans the very best care they deserve have the ability to do that. It is really that simple. So I'm focused on the work ahead in bipartisanship with our Senate Republican colleagues, and I hope the Republican House majority will follow our example.
Senator Heinrich, who's done a great job working with us on our AI forum.
It was a few years ago when Senator Rob Portman and I sat down and decided to create an AI caucus, and we sent a letter out to our colleagues saying that we were going to start working in a bipartisan way to legislate around artificial intelligence. And I think it's safe to say that as we asked people to join that caucus, there was not an overwhelming response at the time. But it seems that Congress has finally really discovered artificial intelligence. And tomorrow, I think we're going to continue the progress that we've already made in just making sure that all of our colleagues have the fluency in this space that their constituents would want of us as we start to wrestle with these questions of what do we need to do additionally to regulate AI, where are the holes in the current system of law that we have in this country that didn't anticipate artificial intelligence's impact. And I think it'll be a really good opportunity for us to start thinking through as a body, how do we maximize those places where AI can make a substantial positive difference in people's lives while minimizing the risks. And since I'm on the Appropriations Committee, I would be remiss if I didn't say I think the Senate is really the gold standard right now for how we should be approaching these difficult issues in a time when we are closely divided in the Senate, closely divided in the House, and have to come up with a pragmatic solution for the American people, and the Senate is taking that job very seriously.
Ready for your questions?
Mr. Leader.
Way in the back where it's quiet. Redhead. You. Yeah. You're surprised I called on you. You couldn't believe it. What's your name?
Nico.
Nico has the floor.
are your thoughts on the impeachment inquiry by Speaker McCarthy?
I think the impeachment inquiry is absurd. The American people want us to do something that will make their lives better, not go off on these chases and witch hunts. The bottom line is, as we have said, you can only accomplish keeping the government open in a bipartisan way. I have sympathy with Speaker McCarthy. He's in a difficult position. But sometimes you got to tell these people who are way off the deep end, who have no interest in helping the American people, who just want to pursue their own witch hunts, that they can't go forward with it. So I'm disappointed. I think it's absurd. But we are not going to let it stop us here in the Senate from keeping the government open and working in a bipartisan way. Yes, tall guy back there.
When it comes to the AI forum tomorrow, we've already had 3 of these behind closed doors. Tomorrow's going to be behind closed doors. This is kind of reversing the sunshine.
No, we've had. I don't know which other ones you're referring to as behind closed doors, but they may have been on the Intelligence Committee. But we've had 9 to 12 hearings that have been in the open. There's 1 in the open today. There's 2 more in the open tomorrow. There's a time and a place for everything, and I think this AI forum will produce some real positive knowledge and results so that people can move forward. But we're going to continue to have open hearings, and the whole process will move forward through committees in an open process. Yes, way in the back.
Are you confident there'll be a time agreement on amendments for the mini bus in order to pass that by the end of the week?
Look, we're working Chairman Murray and Vice Chairman Collins are working in a great way together. Leader McConnell and I are working in a great way together. So when that happens, we usually reach a good time agreement, and I'm very hopeful that will happen. Yes?
Would you consider, or are you guys discussing any possible rules changes, either on a bipartisan basis or unilaterally as Democrats, to deal with the Tuberville?
Look, the bottom line is this is a Republican problem. Don't pawn it off on us. It was created by Tuberville solely himself. And it's up to the Republicans to put pressure on him to back off, plain and simple. Now, we're already seeing that pressure mount. Last week, one of the major Republican candidates for Senate, Nikki Haley, said that Tuberville ought to back off, and just a few days ago, one of the most powerful and influential congressmen in the House, Congressman Call, said the same thing. The pressure is mounting. Tuberville should back off. What he's doing is disgraceful and solely his own causing. Don't pawn it off on us. Yes.
Is it a red line for you to include Ukraine aid as part of the CR at the end of the month?
Look, Leader McConnell and I have a very similar view on this. We think Ukraine aid is extremely important. We're going to do everything we can to do it. My guess is a majority in the House, if you just had a vote on the floor of the House, would support Ukraine aid, probably even a majority of Republican House members, although I haven't counted those. And so we're going to push very hard for Ukraine aid because, look, Ukraine is struggling. They need the help. They're making some progress. It would be really wrong to shut that aid off just at a time when they're making some progress. Yes.
On Iran, what's your reaction to the White House's deal with the Iranian government to get these American hostages back in exchange for $6 billion?
Well, I don't know the details, so I couldn't really comment at much length. We all know the Iranian government causes real problems throughout the Middle East and even the world.
Leader Schumer,
yes.
Back to Tuberville and Holes, is that to say that Democrats aren't going to negotiate with Tuberville? Because Mitt Romney and Dan Sullivan, for instance, say that you guys need to give some ground.
It's absurd. It's caused by Tuberville, solely by Tuberville. He has to back off. They should be telling Tuberville, and maybe they are privately, that he should back off. Thank you.